Sure, thank you. My name is KT Bryski. I'm the author of Her Hands Like Ice. Thanks very much for having me, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm just going to read about the first minute and a half of the piece. Her Hands Like Ice. The hands of the vampire hunter move like spiders, and I hate them. They creep over our kitchen table, avoiding the plate of sausage and entry bread my mother has left out. They scuttle along the sides of a polished walnut case. Quick fingers, sly fingers. They lift belts and let brass buckles fall with a clink, clink, clink. They ease the lid up. Inside, his tools rest on velvet the color of old blood. My mother chokes on a gasp. My father will not look. I hate how the hands of the vampire hunter are this way and that as he lays out his instruments, caressing each like a lover. Holy water, bullets, pistol, garlic, knife, and smoothly, without a moment's pause, the stake. At the sight of this last, my mother clutches my father's arm, her round face terrified in the candlelight. It won't hurt, the vampire hunter says quietly. My mother whimpers. Remember, it's not your daughter. He glances to me. Not your sister, Merritt. I can only stare at his hands. They do not look like butcher's hands. She has not bitten, he asks. My parents do not answer, so I say, no. Then I will watch for her tonight. Right, so Merritt is the protagonist of the piece, and it's her sister that they think has become a vampire after death. So, I started with this image of a vampire hunter laying out all of his tools, and from there it was a matter of asking myself a lot of questions about who was in the room, and I was drawn to her. So, asking, what's her relationship to this other woman? Okay, they're sisters. Is she the older or the younger one? What was their relationship like? What's it been like for her following her death? So it's sort of like when you get to know one in real life. You just keep asking questions and trying to find out what they're about and trying to put yourself in their shoes and empathize where you can. So yeah, building out bit by bit, but certainly asking myself a lot helps. In some ways a very similar process of just asking a lot of questions. With the vampire hunter, I wanted to pay a bit of homage to vampire hunters in other works, but also go my own way with it. So as the story progresses, you can see him putting together the pieces of why this is a very different vampire than he might have had to deal with in the past. So kind of taking that vampire hunter archetype, but putting it into a very different context, I think brought out different aspects of character. And as for the parents, it's interesting that you brought them up because they don't have as much of an active role in the story, I don't think. But I hope, anyway, even in that short excerpt, you can see bits of who they are, right? Certainly their relationship and the mother clutching the father's arm. So for me, it was the fewer questions, but trying to find ways, even in just the small glimpses we get of them, to show who they are as people. Because I think that's what it's really all about. It's getting to know who the person is, and then finding ways to communicate that to the reader. So three, actually, main things. And the first two are quite related. I think it's really important to know what your character wants. And not just, I want a drink of water, although that's helpful too, but what keeps them up at night? What drives them? What would they give up anything to get? And then the converse of that, what terrifies them? What scares them? And not just death, or, I don't know, something like that, but what would be the worst thing that could possibly happen to them? And I always find that those are the two cornerstones of starting to build character for me. If I know the one thing that they would give up absolutely everything to get, and the one thing that they would give up absolutely anything to avoid, I've got the stakes and I've got the conflict starting to brew. And from there, when this person meets up against that conflict, that's when we start to see the kind of person they are. The other thing I would say is to try and find just those small moments that tell you quite a lot about who that person is and what they value. Because I think what's important to us and what we value, it always comes out in our actions. So actually, a great example I saw today in real life, and it's actually a terrible thing, but it's great for this kind of characterization. There was about a 10-second clip of one of Donald Trump's defense lawyers stealing coasters from the Senate. It's about 10 seconds long, but he just takes about 3 or 4 and pops them in his briefcase and carries on. And in that 10 seconds, you see exactly what kind of man that is. So it's finding those kind of equivalent ins in your fiction of what's a really small thing that says quite a lot about who this person is. Sure. So a book that I read this past year was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. And it's about this guy named Piranesi who lives in this house, like this kind of magical house where the tides come in and out, and it's full of different statues and things move around. It's pretty magical. And he's just a character that stays with me partly because he's so good. We were talking about values, and his are rock solid. But also, the novel is told as his journals. So we really get to see inside his head and see how his thought process works. And it's so different from other characters I've seen. Like, he's created his own way of mapping the house that he lives in and his own calendar. So just being in that headspace, and I mean, reading someone's diaries, it almost feels like it's a very intimate act anyway. But going through his and really seeing how he is interpreting the world, oh man, I felt so much, I don't know. I always think it's a good sign when you can start to feel your thoughts sort of aligning with the characters. So yeah, I would definitely say Piranesi in the book of the same name by Susanna Clarke. I mean, I gotta go classic. I gotta say Dracula. I have a long history with Dracula. Well, I mean, I'm from Toronto, so I'm a little bit biased towards Toronto. I mean, it depends what you're into. I would definitely also say Montreal is worth a trip. And you can visit the world's largest nickel in Sudbury. So that can be fun. Yeah, if you're interested in more great fiction like the kind Bracken does, definitely give a shout out to Augur magazine. They're a literary magazine based in Canada, and they do kind of similar dreamy, slipstream, fabulous work. So if you like the work that's in Bracken, which is amazing, you should also check out Augur magazine.